The sky turned black on a Tuesday morning. Stood at his office window in Seoul, a cup of coffee growing cold in his hand. He was an aerospace engineer, a man who spent his life dreaming about the stars. Now the stars had come to him, and they brought death. 500 warships hung above the earth like a dark cloud. They blocked the sun. They blocked hope. The Empire had arrived, and they had a simple message for humanity: submit or be erased. The voice came through every radio, every television, every phone on the planet. It spoke in perfect Korean, perfect English, perfect every language. Lord, Supreme Commander of the fleet, did not ask. He commanded. The world tried to fight back. Watched the news as Earth's United Defense Fleet launched from stations around the planet. Brave men and women in ships that suddenly looked like toys compared to the alien vessels. The battle lasted 4 hours. It was not really a battle. It was a lesson. They did not even use their main weapons. Small patrol ships destroyed humanity's entire fleet. They moved through space like sharks through water, fast and deadly and without mercy. When it was over, burning wreckage fell through the atmosphere like shooting stars. Then the real attack began. They dropped from the sky in landing craft the size of city blocks. Their soldiers stood 3 meters tall, covered in armor that no human weapon could break. They moved together like one creature, thousands of bodies sharing one mind. They did not speak. They did not negotiate. They simply took. Seoul fell in 3 days. Was not in the city when it happened. He had taken his wife and their daughter to the mountains. They thought they would be safe there. They thought wrong. The ships flew over the mountains too. They were looking for survivors, for people to capture and enslave. One ship found the small village where and his family were hiding. The bombing started without warning. Remembered the sound. A high scream, then thunder, then silence. He remembered running through smoke and fire, calling his wife's name. He remembered finding her body in the ruins of a house, still holding their daughter. Was dead. She had used her own body as a shield. Their daughter was alive but barely breathing. Carried through the burning forest for 2 days until he found other survivors. A doctor saved her life, but nothing could save what remained of his heart. Across the planet, the same story repeated 1,000,000 times. Cities burned. Families died. Humanity learned what it meant to face a force they could not defeat. In a secret laboratory beneath the mountains of the South, a young scientist named grabbed everything she could carry. Data drives filled with weapons research, blueprints for technologies that were not yet finished. She had been working on next-generation defense systems. Now those systems would never be built. But the research might still matter. Escaped through underground tunnels that were supposed to be secret. 3 of her colleagues died helping her get out. She carried their sacrifice in her heart along with the drives in her bag. A 16-year-old boy named Wu watched his city die from a rooftop. His parents had gone to find food that morning. They never came back. Wu waited for 3 days before he accepted the truth. He was alone now. Everyone was alone now. They did not simply conquer Earth. They organized it. Overseer Myra arrived on a golden ship to manage the occupation. She was tall and thin, with skin the color of pale blue ice. She looked at humans the way humans looked at insects, useful for work, not worth thinking about. They divided Earth into zones. Each zone had quotas. Humans were put to work in mines, in factories, in fields. Those who refused were killed. Those who fought back were killed slowly as an example. Class 3 primitive species, the record said about humanity. Low technology, divided tribal structure, emotional and irrational, no threat assessment required. Lord reported to the High Council that Earth was another easy victory, another world added to an empire of 200 conquered planets. He did not stay to oversee the occupation. There were other worlds to crush, other species to enslave. He never looked back. That was his first mistake. Deep underground, in bunkers and tunnels and forgotten places, humans began to gather. General had been declared dead after the fall of the military command. His body was never found because there was no body. He had escaped through old tunnels that even the scanners could not find. Now he sat in a dark room, surrounded by screens showing the ruins of the world above. Other survivors found him, soldiers who had lost their units, engineers who had lost their labs, ordinary people who had lost everything but their anger. "They think they have won," said to them. His voice was quiet but hard like iron. "They look at us and see weak creatures, divided, broken, easy to control." He stood up slowly. He was old, but his eyes burned with fire that age could not touch. "They do not understand us. They see that we fight each other and they think we are weak. They do not know that we fight because we care, because we feel, because every single one of us carries a fire inside that no force in the universe can put out." The people in the room listened. Some cried, some clenched their fists. "They have conquered 200 worlds," continued. "They have never faced a species like us. They have never faced beings who become stronger when they suffer, who become united when they are broken, who become most dangerous when they have nothing left to lose." He looked at each face in the dim light. "They believe we are weak. Let them believe it. Let them sleep well on their ships while we dig in the darkness. Let them count us as another easy victory." Smiled, it was not a pleasant smile. "One day soon, they will wake up, and on that day they will learn what happens when you give humanity a reason to fight together. They will learn what we become when the only choice is victory or death." In the ruins above, soldiers walked their patrol routes without fear. Their masters had told them the humans were broken. Their masters had never been wrong before. Far below, in tunnels the aliens did not know existed, held his sleeping daughter and made a silent promise to his dead wife. They had come to Earth looking for slaves. They were going to find something else entirely. 2 years passed under the shadow of the barely recognized himself anymore. The engineer who once designed rockets now planned ambushes. The father who once read bedtime stories now taught young fighters how to kill. The occupation had changed him, as it had changed everyone who survived. He commanded the Eastern Resistance Network from abandoned subway tunnels beneath the Korean peninsula. The tunnels stretched for hundreds of kilometers, a hidden city beneath the occupied world above. Thousands of people lived down here now, in the dark, waiting for a chance that might never come. His daughter was 15 now. She helped in the medical section, treating wounded fighters who came back from raids. She had her mother's gentle hands and her father's hard eyes. The war had stolen her childhood, but it had not broken her spirit. On the surface, Overseer Myra ruled with cold efficiency. She sat in her command center in what used to be the National Assembly building, reading reports and issuing orders. Humans worked. Humans died. The quotas were met. Everything was under control. She did not know that one of her own translators was a spy. Walked into the command center every morning with a calm face and a racing heart. She was 24 years old, fluent in 7 languages, and the most valuable asset the Resistance had. For 18 months, she had smiled at her alien masters while memorizing their secrets. Today, she learned something important. They talked freely in front of human translators. They considered humans too stupid to understand anything beyond simple commands. This was their second mistake. "The primitives could never coordinate," Admiral said during a briefing. He was visiting from the fleet, checking on the occupation. "They fight each other constantly. Their history is nothing but war after war among themselves. They are physically weak and emotionally unstable. Even if some resist, they could never unite." Translated his words into Korean for the human workers present. She kept her face empty, but her mind was burning with what she heard next. "Our only vulnerability," continued carelessly, "is that these creatures can act independently. Each one has its own mind. They do not require our network to function. If they ever understood how we operate, he laughed. But they never will. They cannot even imagine a species that thinks as one. That night made her way to a contact point and passed along everything she had learned. The message reached 3 days later. He read it 5 times before he understood what it meant. They were connected. Every soldier, every pilot, every officer shared a neural link that connected them to a central command network. They thought as one mind, moved as one body. It made them powerful. It also meant that without the network they were helpless. They cannot act alone, explained to his commanders. Cut the connection and they become statues. The question was how to cut it. That answer came from an old mining complex in the mountains, where had built her hidden laboratory. She had spent 2 years studying every piece of technology the Resistance could steal. Weapons, communication devices, armor fragments. Piece by piece, she learned how the alien science worked, and piece by piece, she found its weaknesses. Their neural link operates on a specific frequency, explained to when he visited her lab. She looked tired. Her hair had turned gray in places, but her eyes were alive with fierce joy. An electromagnetic pulse tuned to that frequency would disrupt the signal. The soldiers would lose their connection to the network. For how long? I don't know, seconds, maybe a minute. It depends on how fast their system can recover. Seconds, a minute, it was not much, but it might be enough. The Resistance needed a test. Wu volunteered to lead it. He was 18 now, the boy who had watched burn. 2 years of fighting had turned him into something hard and sharp. He moved like a ghost and killed without hesitation. The older fighters called him the Knife because he was small, silent, and deadly. His team captured a patrol ship in a midnight raid. 3 Resistance fighters died taking it. Wu carried one of them back himself, refusing to leave the body behind. The captured ship gave everything she needed. She studied its communication systems for 3 weeks. Then she built the first EMP device. It was small, no bigger than a lunch box. It looked like nothing special, but if it worked, it would change everything. The test happened at an outpost in the mountains. 20 alien soldiers guarded a mining operation where human slaves dug for rare metals, led the attack himself. They waited until midnight. They did not sleep like humans, but they did reduce activity at night. Fewer soldiers were actively patrolling. It was the best chance they would get. Activated the device. The pulse was invisible and silent. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the soldiers stopped moving. They stood like statues, frozen in place. Their weapons hung loose in their hands. Their eyes were empty. For 30 seconds they were not soldiers anymore. They were just bodies without minds. The Resistance fighters moved through them like wind through dead trees. They freed the human slaves. They destroyed the mining equipment. They took weapons and supplies, and not a single soldier could lift a hand to stop them. Then the 30 seconds ended. They woke up. They raised their weapons. They called for reinforcements. But by then, and his people were already gone, vanished into the tunnels that the aliens could not find. That night in the depths of the underground city, gathered his commanders. Now we know, he said. His voice was quiet, but everyone heard him. They are not gods. They are not unbeatable. They have a weakness, and we have found it. He looked at the small device in his hand, the weapon that had given them hope. For 2 years they made us fight alone. They scattered us, isolated us, told us we could never unite. They thought our independence was weakness. He smiled grimly. Let's show them what fighting alone really means. Let's show them what happens when a species that thinks for itself decides to think together. Far above, Admiral received a report about a destroyed outpost. He dismissed it as a random attack, the desperate act of primitive creatures. He did not know that messages were already flying through the Resistance network. He did not know that was already building bigger devices. He did not know that General was connecting every resistance cell on the planet for the first time in 2 years. The spark had been lit. Soon the fire would follow. In her laboratory, worked through the night, building bombs that would change the course of history. In the tunnels, Wu trained his fighters for battles that would shake the world. In the enemy's own command center, smiled at her masters and waited for the signal that would bring them down. And in the darkness beneath Seoul, held the small EMP device and thought about his wife. "They believed we were weak," he whispered to her ghost. "They are about to learn how wrong they were." The Empire had conquered 200 worlds. They had never lost one. That record was about to end. The third year of occupation began with a death sentence. Discovered it while translating a routine communication. Operation Harvest. The words burned in her mind as she kept her face calm and her hands steady. They had decided that Earth's population was too difficult to manage. They would transport all humans to mining colonies on distant worlds. The timeline was 6 months. 6 months before humanity would be scattered across the stars, broken apart forever. She passed the message to the resistance that same night, risking everything to make sure it reached General before morning. The old general read the report in silence. His hands did not shake, his face did not change, but everyone in the room felt the weight of what he was thinking. "Then we have our deadline," he said finally. "We strike in 3 months, one chance, everything we have." The planning began immediately. Traveled through the tunnel networks for weeks, meeting with resistance leaders from across the peninsula. Each cell had survived alone for years. Now they had to learn to fight together. It was not easy. Trust was hard to build when everyone had lost so much. But they had something stronger than trust. They had anger. Worked without sleep, building larger EMP devices. The small bomb had worked on one outpost. She needed something that could black out an entire region, something that could cut the command signal across hundreds of kilometers at once. "It's possible," she told during one of his visits. Dark circles surrounded her eyes, but her voice was steady. "We need more power cells, more components, more time." "You have 3 months. Then I need more help." Sent her 20 of his best engineers. They disappeared into the mountain laboratory and did not come out for weeks. The sounds of their work echoed through the stone day and night. Wu trained a special unit for the coming battle. They were all young, most of them under 20. They had grown up under occupation. They did not remember the world before all they knew was war. "You fight different than us," an older soldier told Wu one day. "We fight to take back what we lost. You fight like you have nothing to lose at all." Wu looked at him with eyes that held no warmth. "We don't." His fighters trained in the darkness, learning to move without sound, to strike without warning. They practiced with captured weapons until they could use them better than the aliens themselves. They were young and they were angry, and they were not afraid to die. They called them primitives. They were about to learn what primitive really meant. Above ground, Overseer Myra began to sense something wrong. Reports came in of missing equipment, stolen weapons, guards who disappeared on patrol and were never found. Small things, annoying things, but together they formed a pattern. "There is organization here," she told Admiral during a meeting. "These are not random attacks." Dismissed her concerns. "They are animals striking in the dark. They cannot coordinate. It is not in their nature." "Perhaps we do not understand their nature." "I have studied 200 conquered species," said coldly. "I understand primitives better than they understand themselves. These creatures will never unite. Their own history proves it." Myra was not convinced, but she did not argue. Instead, she increased patrols and tightened security. She did not know that her most trusted translator was watching everything she did. Then disaster struck. A resistance cell in Europe was betrayed. Someone talked under torture and gave up names, locations, plans. The moved fast, destroying 3 major hideouts in a single night. Hundreds of fighters died. The blow nearly broke the resistance. Received the news in his command center, surrounded by people who looked to him for hope. He felt the weight of their eyes, the weight of all the dead. "We continue," he said quietly. "We cannot stop. We cannot slow down. If we wait, we lose everything. The only way forward is through." General agreed. From his hidden bunker, he sent a message to every resistance cell on the planet. "We have lost friends, we have lost family, we have lost battles, but we have not lost ourselves. The enemy thinks we are broken. Let them think it. Let them sleep well tonight, because when we rise, they will never sleep well again." The preparations continued. Took her greatest risk yet. She planted a virus in the central database, a small program that would wait silently until activated. When the attack came, it would flood enemy communications with false reports, telling commanders that everything was under control while their empire burned around them. If the virus was discovered, she would die. There would be no quick death, no mercy. The made examples of traitors. She planted it anyway. "Why do you do this?" Another human worker asked her one night, a man who suspected what she was but said nothing. "They will catch you eventually. They always do." Thought about her parents, who had died in the first bombing. She thought about her brother, who had been taken to a labor camp and never returned. She thought about all the faces she saw every day, humans who had lost everything and kept walking forward anyway. "Because someone has to," she said. "Because if I don't, then they win. And I would rather die fighting than live as a slave." 3 months passed like 3 heartbeats. Finished the EMP bombs. 47 of them, each powerful enough to black out a command center. They were transported through the tunnel networks, moving through darkness to positions across the planet. Wu received his final orders. His unit would lead the assault on the Korean Peninsula Command Center, the heart of enemy operations in the region. It was a suicide mission. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew. "If we take that center," told him, "we cut the head off the snake. Everything else becomes possible." Wu nodded. He did not ask about survival. He did not talk about after. He simply accepted the mission and began to plan. The night before the attack, climbed to a hidden spot overlooking the ruined skyline of Seoul. Found him there, standing alone in the cold wind. "Tomorrow changes everything," she said. "Yes. We might fail, we might all die." "Yes." She stood beside him, looking at the city they had both loved. Lights moved in the darkness below, patrol ships sweeping through the ruins. They looked so powerful, so unstoppable. "They came here expecting animals," said quietly. "Creatures to use and throw away. They never understood what they were really facing." Thought about his wife, buried in the mountains. He thought about his daughter, sleeping in the tunnels below. He thought about every human who had died and every human who still fought. "No," he agreed, "they never did." Far above them, Lord's personal warship descended through the clouds. The Supreme Commander had returned to oversee Operation Harvest. He expected no problems. Earth was conquered, finished. He did not know that beneath his feet, 47 bombs waited for his arrival. He did not know that an entire planet was holding its breath. Tomorrow, humanity would show the galaxy what it meant to underestimate them. Tomorrow, the rising would begin. At exactly 4 in the morning, the world changed. 47 electromagnetic pulses fired simultaneously across the planet. They were invisible and silent, waves of energy spreading outward from hidden positions on every continent. And wherever they reached, the stopped moving. Watched it happen from his position near Seoul. One moment the alien soldiers were patrolling, moving with their terrible perfect coordination. The next moment they were statues. Their weapons hung loose. Their eyes went blank. The connection to their central network was gone, and without it they were nothing. Go said into his radio, Go now." The attack began. Across the planet, 3 years of hidden preparation exploded into action. Resistance fighters emerged from tunnels, from ruined buildings, from forests and mountains and forgotten places. They moved through frozen soldiers like water through stone. In Europe, fighters took control of a landing field full of enemy ships. In South America, slaves in the mining camps turned on their guards and seized the weapons storage. In Africa and Asia and Australia, the story repeated itself. Humans who had been called primitive, weak, and broken rose up as one and struck back. Wu led his unit through the streets of Seoul toward the command center. The soldiers they passed were still frozen, disconnected from the network that gave them purpose. His fighters did not stop to fight them. They had a bigger target. The command center stood in the ruins of the old government district, a massive building covered in alien metal and blinking lights. Inside, Overseer Myra was receiving reports of disaster. "All sectors reporting system failure," her communications officer said. His voice was shaking. "The neural link is down. Soldiers are unresponsive." "How is this possible?" Myra demanded. She had never known fear before. She was learning it now. "Unknown. We are attempting to restore the network." On his ship above the city, Admiral was receiving similar reports. He stood at his command screen, watching red lights spread across a map of Earth. Each light was a lost position, a destroyed outpost, a captured vessel. "This cannot be happening," he whispered. "They are primitives, they cannot coordinate." But they were coordinating. Every attack was timed to the second. Every target was chosen with precision. The humans were not fighting randomly. They were fighting as one united force. Tried to contact his soldiers on the ground. Nothing. He tried to reach other ships in the fleet. Most were not responding. The few that answered reported the same thing. Their crews were frozen, cut off from the network. Then the second wave hit. Had known that would try to restore their connection. She had planned for it. Secondary EMP devices activated across the planet, disrupting the network again just as it began to recover. In the command center, Overseer Myra felt the pulse like a physical blow. She had been connected to the network her entire life, part of a vast shared mind that stretched across the stars. Now she was alone, truly alone. The silence in her head was terrifying. Wu and his team reached the outer doors of the command center. The guards were still frozen from the pulse. His fighters planted charges and blew the entrance open. Inside was chaos. Officers stumbled through the corridors, trying to function without the network that had always guided them. They could barely walk straight. They bumped into walls, tripped over their own feet. Without the shared mind, they were lost. Wu felt no pity. He remembered his parents. He remembered burning. He moved through the building like a ghost, his team behind him, clearing room after room. They found Overseer Myra in the main control center, standing alone among her frozen guards. She turned to face them, her cold blue eyes meeting Wu's dark ones. "You," she said, "you are just a child." "I was a child when you killed my parents," Wu replied. "I'm not a child anymore." He raised his weapon. Across the city, led his own team toward Lord's command ship. It had landed in a park near the old palace, surrounded by elite guards. But even elite guards were helpless when their minds went dark. The ship's door stood open, walked through it like he owned the place. Lord was inside, alone. The Supreme Commander stood 3 meters tall, covered in ceremonial armor that had never been scratched in battle. He had conquered 200 worlds. He had never faced a species that could hurt him. Now he was cut off from everything. No network, no soldiers, no fleet, just himself and the small human standing at the entrance to his chamber. "How?" demanded, his voice shook, realized with surprise that the alien was afraid. "You were broken, divided, primitive." Walked forward slowly. He held a captured plasma rifle in his hands, a weapon that could burn through the thickest armor. You looked at us and saw weakness, said. You saw our wars, our conflicts, our divisions. You thought those made us less. He stopped a few meters from the alien commander. You were wrong. We fight because we care. We argue because we think for ourselves. Every single human on this planet has their own mind, their own will, their own fire. You could never understand that. Your species shares one mind. When that mind breaks, you have nothing. Lord reached for a weapon on his belt. His hand was shaking. We are the Empire. We have ruled 1,000 star systems for 10,000 years. You cannot defeat us. You are nothing. We are humanity, replied, and you believed we were weak. He raised the rifle. Watch us prove you wrong. The plasma bolt was bright enough to light up the night sky. By morning, it was over. Human forces controlled every major installation on Earth. Captured ships were being secured by pilots who learned to fly them in hours. The neural network was still down, and without it, the remaining soldiers could not organize any resistance. Walked through the conquered command center, past prisoners who had once been her masters. She found Overseer Myra under guard, the alien who had looked at humans like insects for 3 years. You served me, Myra said when she saw. You smiled at me every day. You were nothing. Knelt down so they were face to face. I looked at you every day, she said softly. I watched everything you did. I listened to every secret you shared. And you never saw me as a threat. That was your mistake. She stood up and walked away without looking back. In the ruins of Seoul, found Wu sitting alone among the wreckage. The young fighter was not celebrating. His eyes were distant, looking at something only he could see. It's done, said. Wu nodded slowly. I know. Your parents would be proud. Wu was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up and looked at with eyes that held no joy, no relief, only a cold determination. It's not done, he said. The fleet is still up there, more will come. This was just the beginning. Looked up at the sky, where captured alien ships were already rising to secure Earth's orbit. He thought about the 200 worlds that had conquered, 200 planets full of slaves who had given up hope. Yes, he agreed, it is. The storm had broken over Earth. But the real war was just beginning. The sun rose over a free Earth. It had been 1 week since the uprising, and the world was still learning to breathe again. Smoke still rose from destroyed outposts. Wreckage still littered the streets of 100 cities. But for the first time in 3 years, humans walked in the light without fear. Lord was alive. This was intentional. Had wanted to kill him. Every part of him had screamed for it. But General had ordered the Supreme Commander taken prisoner and had obeyed. He is worth more alive, explained when questioned the decision. A dead commander is a martyr. A living prisoner is a message. The message was simple, that could be beaten. In laboratories around the world, scientists worked on captured technology. Led the largest team, taking apart systems piece by piece and learning their secrets. Within days, they understood how the alien weapons worked. Within weeks, they were improving them. Their technology is advanced, reported to the newly formed Earth Council. But it is also standardized. Every weapon, every ship, every system is exactly the same across their entire empire. They never innovate. They never adapt. They have been using the same designs for thousands of years. Why, someone asked. Because they never needed to change. They conquered every species they met. They never faced a real challenge, smiled grimly. Until now. The fleet above Earth received a simple transmission: surrender or be destroyed. Most ships, their crews were still struggling to function without the neural network, still learning to think as individuals. A few tried to fight. They were destroyed by their own captured vessels, now crewed by humans who had learned to fly them in a matter of days. Admiral was among those who surrendered. He was brought before General in chains. his proud face twisted with confusion and shame. "How did you do this?" he demanded. "We studied your species, we knew everything about you." Looked at him with something almost like pity. "You knew facts," the old general said. "You knew our history, our technology, our biology, but you did not know us. You saw our divisions and thought we were weak. You did not understand that we argue because we think. We fight because we care. And when something threatens all of us, we become something more than the sum of our parts." Shook his head. "It is not possible. Your species is too young, too primitive, too emotional." "Emotion is not weakness, Admiral. It is fuel. You took everything from us, our homes, our families, our future, and you expected us to simply accept it." Leaned forward. "You made us angry, you made us desperate, you made us united, and that was the worst mistake you ever made." Across the planet, people were rebuilding, but they were also preparing. The Earth Council sent a message to the High Council, broadcast on every frequency the aliens used. It was not a request for peace. It was not a plea for understanding. It was a warning. "Your empire has enslaved 200 worlds. You have crushed civilizations and erased cultures. You believed the galaxy belonged to you. You were wrong. We are humanity. We are coming for every world you have conquered. And we will not stop until every slave is free." The first human fleet launched 1 month after the uprising. It was a collection of captured ships, repaired and modified and crewed by people who had never imagined they would travel to the stars. Watched them go from the surface, standing beside his daughter, now 16 years old. "Will they come back?" she asked. "Some of them will. And the others?" Was quiet for a moment. "They will be remembered, every single one." Nodded. She had her mother's gentle hands and her father's hard eyes. The war had taken her childhood, but it had given her something else. Purpose. "I want to fight," she said. Looked at her. He wanted to say no. He wanted to protect her, keep her safe, spare her from the violence he had seen. But he knew he could not. The war would not stop because he wished it would. "Your mother would have wanted you to live," he said. "She wanted me to be free," replied. "So do I." Wu did not join the fleet. He had been offered a command, a chance to lead fighters to the stars. He had refused. "I fought so people could live," he told. "Now I want to see them live." He went back to the ruined city where his parents had died. He helped clear rubble. He built shelters. He taught children who had never known peace what it felt like to play without fear. The knife became a builder. The soldier became a healer. It was what he needed. Was offered a position on the Earth Council. She refused that too. "I spent 3 years pretending to be someone I'm not," she said. "I need time to remember who I am." She traveled to a small village in the mountains, a place that had somehow survived the occupation almost untouched. She found a house there, planted a garden, learned to live in silence. Sometimes, at night, she dreamed of Overseer Myra's cold blue eyes, but the nightmares came less often as the months passed. She had done her part. Now others would carry the fight forward. The first reports came back from the fleet 6 months later. They had reached the nearest occupied world, a planet called Sira by its native people. The aliens there had been enslaved for 300 years. They had forgotten what freedom meant. The human fleet had reminded them. "We showed them the recordings," the commander reported. "The uprising, the victory, humanity standing where the once stood. Some of them cried. They had believed rescue was impossible. They had given up hope generations ago. The on that world had been defeated quickly. Without the neural network, they could not coordinate. Without reinforcements, they could not hold. The slaves had risen up alongside the humans, fighting for the first time in centuries. One world liberated, 199 to go. General did not live to see the end. He died in his sleep 1 year after the uprising, his heart finally giving out after a lifetime of war. Thousands attended his memorial, humans from every nation, every culture, every background. He never stopped fighting, said in his speech. Even when the world burned, even when hope seemed lost, he never stopped believing we could win, and because he believed, we did. The war continued for years. Not every battle was won. Not every planet was saved. Humans learned that victory came with a price, that freedom was paid for in blood and sacrifice. But they did not stop. They could not stop. Lord remained a prisoner on Earth. Once a year, on the anniversary of the uprising, visited him. "Would you like to update your records?" she would ask each time, showing him reports from the front. Another world liberated, another fortress fallen, another species rising up to join the fight. Never answered. He sat in his cell and stared at the wall, trying to understand what had happened. He had conquered 200 worlds. He had ruled millions of soldiers. He had believed his empire would last forever. And then he had met humanity. On the final visit brought something different, a recording of the last stronghold falling. The empire was finished. Every conquered world was free. 200 species rescued from slavery by a race they had dismissed as primitive. "Your historians wrote that humans were emotional, divided, and weak," said. "They wrote that we could never be a threat, that we would be easy to control." She placed the recording where could see it. On the screen, humans and aliens stood together, celebrating a victory that had seemed impossible. "Would you like to update that entry?" Finally looked at her. His eyes were empty. His spirit was broken. He had lived long enough to watch everything he built turn to ash. "What are you?" he asked quietly. Smiled. It was not a cruel smile. It was almost sad. "We are what you made us," she said. "You came to Earth looking for slaves. You found something else. You pushed us, burned us, broke us, and we came back stronger than before." She stood up to leave. "You believed we were weak. The whole galaxy believed it. Now they know the truth. Humanity does not give up. Humanity does not surrender. Humanity fights until there is nothing left to fight for, and then we find something new to fight for." She walked to the door and stopped. "Thank you for teaching us who we are." She left without looking back. Outside, the sun was rising over a world that had learned to be free. Across the galaxy, 200 planets were learning the same lesson. And in the darkness between the stars, other species were beginning to hear the stories. A race called humanity, a people who had lost everything and won it back. A warning to every tyrant, every empire, every force that believed it could not be stopped. The galaxy had never seen anything like humanity. Now they would never forget.